This is Roger Struckoff with Syscon TV. We're at day 3 at Cloud Expo in New York, and I'm sitting right now with Alex Gorbachev from Intelligent Systems Services. We're going to talk a little bit about storage and talk a little bit about the cloud. Alex, thanks for joining us, and give us a little overview of the company.
Sure, Roger. So the company has existed for 21 years. I started in 1994. We have been building many enterprise solutions, all IT, so all ITs, plumbing and sewage, if you will, server, storage, interconnects, and for a time the storage technologies were sufficient for basically what the companies were running, the enterprises were running. And then at some point something happened, I would say maybe 5 years ago or so, where the data truly started exploding. I don't think the notion of the cloud was really defined as of then. 2 years ago at this conference, I've heard a lot of talks about, so we're here for the cloud, but what is the cloud? And the answer was generally, nobody has any idea what that is. I think that's solidified quite a bit, but the data explosion continued not just throughout the new technologies, but throughout basically every enterprise, almost every enterprise out there. There is government regulations on data retention. There's really good business reasons to do big data analytics and just in general to retain a lot of data. What happened was, if you had storage technologies which were completely sufficient and very mature at the end of the first decade of the 2000s, all of a sudden it's not. It no longer is. So the technologies became relevant at this point, which were really mostly reserved for things like national labs, research institutions, and we in our practices and our businesses run into a lot of challenges with our clients, and with ourselves as a client, in just not being able to keep up with the storage performance demands as well as the storage capacity demands, right?
Now, this is the interesting thing is that, a few years ago, people were saying what and why and maybe how, but now suddenly it seems as if many more people are already deploying into the cloud, and now they're sort of thinking, okay, I'm here, now what do I do? And then you talk about growth in data, that seems to be increasing at an increasingly rapid rate.
Yeah, it's exponential. And what also happens is this issue sort of backfires into a traditional style enterprise, not necessarily a cloud enterprise. Cloud is primarily defined as something as a service, right? But then again, you have traditional organizations which everything's on premise. I suppose you could call it a private cloud, but they're having the same issues. And the other interesting thing that happened is open source has become very mature. Linux in general and just an open source movement. And a lot of top-tier manufacturers, I would say probably most top-tier manufacturers at this point, are heavily invested in open source. They realize they can create very powerful solutions very quickly. It's agile, it's efficient. And so, and we've started getting involved with that some years ago, and then we discovered that there's amazing projects that are available right now. So in particular, we got involved with a Ceph project, which was started by Sage Weil for his PhD in 2007. He's a brilliant gentleman. I've met him several times in person. And essentially, he solved this storage explosion problem in principle back in 2007, except nobody needed it back then, except for large research organizations. Well, all of a sudden now it's very relevant, and everybody needs it. And of course, Ceph, there's a commercial side to that, which was called Inktank, and now they're part of Red Hat. There's also brilliant people working on this throughout the world. Some of them I've met. And so what we realized is, this type of technology is looked at as a solution for the cloud, a solution for the large, elastic, very rapidly expanding services, but also that could be brought back into the traditional style enterprise and solve the problems which they're facing right now. And if they're not going to the cloud right now, they still have to solve these problems.
That's what I was thinking of. You're talking about, a few years ago, a petabyte of data was an almost unimaginable amount, and only a very, very few sort of government or government-sponsored institutions might have it. Now you're getting down to large enterprises and even medium-sized enterprises with enormous amounts of data, and so they're faced with problems and maybe not the resources to address it the way that the original customers could, right?
Well, and also software development has changed, right? So at some point you could make a spec, you could make a specification, and then expect things to behave according to that spec. And right now they can be thrown out the window the moment you get them. Most everybody we talk to in financial business, healthcare business, anything with data providers or hosting providers. We're a hosting provider as well, for specific verticals. Everybody pretty much reflects this fact that the specs are irrelevant. The specs will be blown away essentially in a very short time. So what that means is that the foundation structure, specifically storage, needs to be able to react to those challenges. In other words, you should be able to expand ideally infinitely. And so we built this system. We built it based on Ceph. We use pure unaltered open source, behind the scenes. There's Ceph, there's lots of other things. There's clustering technology, there's caching technology. We've overlaid it with a control and monitor infrastructure, which is very powerful. That's not open source. We built it on proprietary frameworks, but you can run what's underneath of it on pure unaltered open source, which is what we do. And what that is able to bring to the table essentially to this industry is solve the problems going forward, scalability problems, as well as the existing challenges in traditional enterprise data centers.
How do people learn more? Where do they find you online?
ISS-integration.com. So www.iss-integration.com, or if you just search for ISS Storage Supercore, that's where we are.
So I think there's many more hours of conversation we could have. You should have them with Alex Gorbachev, who's been sitting with us for a few minutes. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for watching. For Syscon TV, this is Roger Struckhoff.